Sorry about that, everyone. Little technical challenges, but hopefully we're all good. Um, Thanks for joining today. I am going to be talking about our suite of products that we think of as under an umbrella of intelligence. So products that help you test and optimize and use machine learning and AI where it makes sense. Going to do an introduction. I shamelessly stole this format from Ryan and Nick because I think it's helpful to kind of talk about, a little bit about me. I joined the Post in about 2012. Actually, before that, I worked at NPR for a little while. I joined in the newsroom. I was on the politics desk. I was working on elections coverage, working on all kinds of new, exciting things we could do online to tell the news. Basically kind of made my way into the product side. I edited the mobile apps for the Washington Post for a while, kind of started working as a product manager there. Although I believe my title was innovation editor because that's before we had product managers in the newsroom. And I joined ARC in around 2016 at a really exciting time when we were, really kind of just starting up, and it was kind of a dream for me to be able to work with news organizations all over the world. And I've been here ever since. So now I am I lead the product management team who focuses on the experiences products. So that's page builder, themes, our web gateway, CDN, delivering all those experiences at scale. And yeah, really focus on anything that the reader kind of sees. I am doing a ARC Advice sessions later, so feel free to book some time with me. I also put my email up here. Been trying to meet as many people as in person as possible, but also if you have any questions and want to follow up with me after the conference, please do so. I'd love to reach out, next week and just talk about your experience with the experience products. So yeah, like I said, gonna talk about some of the capabilities we have as part of our intelligence platform, starting with things you can do now, also some things we're working on coming soon. I'll get into a little bit of some strategies for getting started with testing and optimizing, and then also looking a little further out on the horizon, like what else are we exploring in this space. So, ARC Intelligence today. Like I mentioned, we want to use machine learning or AI technologies where it makes sense to help you optimize your site, better connect with your readers. So there's two main capabilities I'm going to talk about today first that you can use now. One is content testing. This is something called multivariate testing. I'm going to get into what exactly that is. It's kind of like A/B testing, but a little fancier. And its real purpose is to test content, as you might guess, such as like headlines, one story headline versus another story headline, one image versus another image, see what encourages readers to view that story. And the second area is content recommendations. So analyzing all of your content on your site, the reader behavior, who's reading those stories on your site, and then making recommendations that you can surface in places like, at the bottom of the article, like to encourage readers to recirculate. Okay, so I'll get into content testing first. And I'm gonna, whoops. Oh, that should be a video. Oh, maybe this is the video. Sorry. Okay, content testing is a testing tool that's integrated into Page Builder Editor. Like I said, it does multivariant tests. What that means is you can have multiple variants. I'll explain a little bit more about that soon. But you basically, you go into a page in Page Builder, you click on the three dots. There's a little option to create additional variants. Then you can go in and change whatever you want, like the text. I'm going to show a video demo of that next. And then see which variant most encourages readers to, click and read that article. You do have to connect your blocks to the Bandito library, and I'll also talk about that. Let's see. Okay, so this should be the video. Yeah, so this is kind of just showing, you go click on the three dots, you can add a variant, and then you can change whatever you want about the content or the custom field. So in this case, it's changing some of the header text. So now we have these variants. There's one that's top favorites, one that's editor's favorites. We'll add one that's our favorites. It's a kind of simplistic example, but just to show you, you just add a variant, change what you want, and then once this is done, once you have the variants, you just republish your page, and the content testing will start. It's designed to be really easy to use, so like editorial users, people who aren't super technical can start it on their own. This is another example, maybe in like a sign up button or some kind of call to action, you want to change, like test two versions of text or even two different colors. It's really meant for these kind of small changes where you're really just trying to test the content and see what is most effective. So I'll get into a little bit about what this multivariant testing is. You may have also heard of this tool referred to as Bandito. That's kind of the name of the algorithm behind it. Really, it's all about content testing. So that's why I'm, talking about it in that sense. So basically, in Bandito, the algorithm got its name because it uses something called a multi-arm bandit for testing. So the difference really is, like, in a traditional A/B test or even like ABC test multiple, you at the beginning of the test, you decide, how much of your audience do you want to see each of these options. Like in this example, it's kind of basically like a split 3 ways, like 33% each see each option. You run it for a certain amount of time, and then at the end, you look at your analytics and you say, okay, option A won. Now let's move everything to option A. So all the readers see that version. The multi-arm bandit is designed so that as it starts serving these options to readers and it starts to get a sense of which one is winning, it'll serve that variant to more and more readers. And so what it kind of refers to as like the highest value option, like the one that seems to be providing the most click-through, it serves that to more and more readers as it's going. It's still testing the other ones, like just, to get to the statistical amount it needs to make the full determination, but basically you get the benefits of the testing sooner because it serves that traffic to the leading option. Let's see. And there's a couple of reasons we chose this for content testing as opposed to just a traditional A/B test. So some of the advantages of the multi-arm bandit variant test, you can actually add variants after the test begins. So let's say you have editors who are working on the homepage. They're thinking about a couple different options for the headline of a story, which one is going to engage readers more. They put in a few, variants. They start the test, and then someone else has an idea and they want to add that. You can go in and add a variant, and the algorithm will like automatically adjust, start introducing that to people, and you don't have to like completely start the test over. So that's an advantage, just to be able to kind of change things on the fly. The second thing is with the Bandito algorithm, we have it set up, it will automatically decide a winner. So it's really great for, busy editorial teams who have a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of news changing throughout the day. They can make these tests, and the Bandito will actually determine a winner if, one variant really proves itself to be the most valuable. And you don't have to go in and close the test. Like, it just is a lot easier for that kind of like non-technical user. And the way we can do that is because when you integrate with Bandito, you basically register an event, like what success means. So you have to tell us, what does success mean in this test? And typically, for content testing, it's clicks. So on a block, you basically say, all right, if a user clicks, on this story, that's success. And so Bandito knows that, and it can make that determination of which variant is encouraging more people to click. Some other use cases, I think I talked about, like what headline or image most entices readers to click on that story. I think if your newsroom doesn't do this kind of thing already, I think it's a really good option. Sometimes you have to kind of develop that culture of like headline experimentation, seeing what works, what most interests readers, obviously without like going too far into the clickbait side of things. But it's a really good tool to experiment, and the editorial staff can kind of learn what patterns of headlines, what types of headlines work better over time. You can also use it to say, like, put two different stories in the same spot and see which one are people most interested in reading right now. So for example, maybe on something like lower down on the homepage, there's like a featured magazine, long read kind of article. It's not like the breaking news of the moment. It's like additional, kind of lean back reading. And maybe you're not sure which one is going to more resonate with your audience on a Sunday morning. And you can create two variants and just change the content in those variants and see which one is better resonating with the audience at that time. And last, like I said, in things like a newsletter sign up, you could change the call to action and just see, which text better entices a user to take that action. So once you start the test, then you have to know how it's doing. There's a couple ways you can see that. So this one, and sorry if I'm blocking it, right in Page Builder, where you created the variants, you'll be able to see like the status of the test. This one is saying variant 1 is the winner. It had a click-through rate of 90%, which is very high. But yeah, so you could, like, the editorial staff that makes the test can also see the results right there. It actually gives it a little like trophy badge that's blocked by that little text box, but kind of makes it visually very obvious which one won. And we also recently introduced a dashboard where you can see all of the tests that have run, across the site and the status and like who was, which version won. So again, I think that's like a good way to kind of, the newsroom, the editorial staff may be busy, they do a lot of tests, and again, the test will close automatically, but it's good to come back and make sure people are learning from, what's working well. So this is kind of like the bird's eye view where you can do that. So if you want to get started, contact your account manager. Content testing is an add-on. It has to be enabled. If you're using themes, we have some promo blocks that are enabled for this, like the things that go on the homepage and all about promoting stories. And then you can also build an integration as well. And we have a developer guide. We'll share these slides and the links and everything. But the key thing is, including the Bandito library and then like updating the block code to say for this register success event and tell us like what success means for this block, which, like I said, about 90% of the time it's going to be the click event that's determining like this variant is more effective than this variant. Okay. Cool. Next topic is content recommendations. So this is, like I mentioned before, about providing recommendations for, for readers that have finished one article, or maybe readers on your homepage, like what is most, what's going to be most effective to encourage them to stay and read another article. It provides these recommendations based on analysis of site traffic. So you actually, you put a Clavis integration on your site. It's listening to, what users are reading, gathering that data, analyzing it, and then sending back recommendations. Usually, like I said, this is something that would be good for like if you have a right rail on your article page, or especially at the bottom of the article page. So like if a reader has really made it through that whole story, they're very engaged, you want to encourage them to click on something else, and so this is a good spot to try to optimize what that content is. But you can also use them on, a landing page or a home page. This is another one where we have the name of the algorithm, Clavis, you also may have heard of. Really what this provides is content recommendations, but we also kind of refer to it as Clavis. So it, like I said, it analyzes that click activity to make recommendations, and really is based more on user behavior than anything else, and I'll get a little bit into that next. So we had a previous version of Clavis, and it at the time relied on actually analyzing story content and understanding what is this story about, like what topics does it cover, and then recommending to readers, stories with similar content. But we've actually found that there are a couple issues with this. One is that it only worked in English, or training it on a whole new natural language processing model. And training it is a really expensive, takes a lot of time to do. And it also, as kind of the technology in this space evolved, it's become apparent that that's not necessarily the best way to suggest content that readers will click on. Again, in the past, it would kind of like process the article, determine if a story had keywords like celebrity in it, and if so, it would recommend other articles that also have, are about celebrities or entertainment. And now there's other, collaborative filtering models that instead of looking at the actual topics and the content, it looks at user behavior and users who are have similar reading patterns to each other, like what do they tend to read. So this is our new version of Clavis. Like I mentioned, it's based on the actual page views of articles and understanding, when someone reads one article, what else are they most likely to read. So it's working on collaborative filtering, and it doesn't matter what the language is. It's just about kind of the browsing patterns. We don't need to analyze the topics. So these are the endpoints we have available today. I'll talk a little bit about the difference because there's a little bit of nuance. So Similar provides, this can only be used on an actual article page because basically what it does is it understands, what is this article page, the idea of this article page. Readers who read this article also read other articles. So it's kind of reliant on watching when someone reads article A, like what other articles did they tend to read after that, and most lead to success and recirculation. And so these recommendations are specific to an article. Then we have most popular and trending. And the difference here is popular is about most read articles over the past 12 hours. Pretty self-explanatory. Trending is designed to catch articles that, maybe they were just published, so there hasn't been enough traffic yet for it to get into that most popular, but it's on a really high, fast upward trajectory. It's gaining readers really quickly, more quickly than other articles. So it can, spot articles that are like breaking news or just really quickly resonating with readers. So just a couple different options for those modules, to resurface those recommendations. So yeah, like I said, these three models, the endpoints that I'm talking about, are collaborative, and it essentially returns the same results to any reader. It's these can be done server side. All the readers will essentially see the same recommendations. But we're kind of now exploring and building towards, once we gather this kind of data, is getting more into unique user personalization recommendations. So it would be more, this person as a reader, what specifically might most entice them to stay. So that's something we're in the, kind of exploration phase right now. If that is of interest to you, definitely come talk to me. I'd love to hear more. And like I said, you can get started contacting your account manager. It has to be enabled. And then we have a developer's guide to build the integration. It's pretty straightforward. You add the Clavis SDK to the website, just send clickstream data, and then the recommendations endpoint is what gives you back the actual content recommendations, and those are essentially a content source in Page Builder, and we have example code for those content sources. Okay, so those are things that are available now. Now I'm going to switch to something that is coming soon. And soon, like within the next 3 months. This is audience targeting. So the idea here is, really being able to serve different versions of your content to different groups of users. And I'll get a little bit more into this. So like today, there's users, they go to your homepage, and they're served the one homepage that is published in Page Builder. Pretty straightforward. What audience targeting enables is you could have multiple variants of your homepage. So they could be completely curated differently, totally different content, and depending on the characteristics of the user, they'll see the version that you assign them to. So if it kind of sounds like what I was talking about, with content testing, it's giving multiple options to serve to readers. It is kind of similar, but I kind of want to explain what's different about audience targeting. Our content testing is client-side. And essentially what that means is a user requests the page, the CDN gives them the page, but there may be some JavaScript or, like basically both variants are sent in that page call. So for example, if you're using content testing, you have two different headlines for a story. The user downloads both headlines. So that is okay for like really small tests like that, like very minuscule to have 2 sentences sent to the user's browser. But if you're doing something that is gonna be a lot more, require downloading a lot more HTML, CSS, JavaScript than that, you really want to do server-side testing or targeting, which is essentially the user only gets the version of the page that they need. They're not downloading all of your different variants. So I'm just kind of want to use this as an example of like when it makes sense to use client-side testing and targeting and when it makes sense to use server-side. So for client-side, you really want to use it for small and isolated changes, content testing. There is a content test set up on this page. You probably may not even actually be able to see it because it's very small, but like these 2 headlines are different. So, 99.99% of the page is the same for all users. There's just that like, 0.01% that is different. So we can send that extra text to the user and it's not gonna, impact their performance. But if you really wanna do more than that, like completely change the layout of the page, as you can see over here, it's like a big change, it's very visually different. Maybe you have entirely different stories. You don't wanna send a user both versions of that page, because that is, 200 times or 200% more, it's probably not the right metric, but twice as much content to download and could have a real bad impact on performance. So you only want to send the user the version of the page that they actually need. So I'll talk a little bit about how you would set this up. This is a view of our delivery tool. If you're familiar with this, it's where you would go to set up like URL redirects. When this release comes out, you'll be able to set up audiences. So this is kind of showing like a list of different audiences. One is German customers, one is mobile segment. And so we'll go in and create a new audience. And when you create an audience, we have different criteria you can use to sort users into an audience. There's 3 main kinds. There's country. So for example, here, if you're looking for readers who are in Canada or in the United States, you can use this option, but it's a list of any country. There's also criteria of device, and it could be, is or is not, and the options are mobile, tablet, and desktop. So basically you can determine, what device the user is on. So these first 2 are actually detected by capabilities from Akamai, which is our CDN partner. They basically know where the user is based on their IP address. They can map it to a country, and they also know what kind of device the user is on. So all of this detection can be done at the CDN level, which is how we're doing that server-side targeting, and it doesn't have to come all the way back to the client side. And then the last criteria, and sorry, I know I'm covering this up a little bit, but this one is really powerful. It's cookie. So this is kind of going back to first-party data we've been talking a lot about. Third-party cookies are going away, but you can still set first-party cookies. You can set your own cookies on your own users, and you'll be able to target based on cookies. So for example, if you know whether or not a user is a subscriber, you could give them a cookie. Maybe the name is status, and the value for subscribers is subscribers. So this is basically, you can enter in any cookie name, cookie value, whatever you all call your cookies, and it'll the targeting process will match readers who have that cookie set. So for example, if I'm a subscriber, I type in whatever the homepage for a website. Akamai knows what cookies I have set on me, and so if I have a cookie that says I'm a subscriber, and you have the targeting set up, it'll recognize that and serve me the version of the page that you've assigned for subscribers. Okay, so that's about setting up and defining the audiences. The next step is actually connecting those audiences to page experiences. So this is kind of similar to, if you work with Page Builder and you might have versions of a page. It's a really similar concept, but previously, you can only have one published page that readers actually see. Now what you'll be able to do is have multiple published variants and actually assign those variants to the different audiences. So this is just showing, within Page Builder, I'm editing the home page, but I've created a mobile variant that I want to serve to users who are on their mobile devices. And there'll be a drop-down, and you just go in and select the segment or the audience that you want to see this content. And that's linked directly to the audiences you set up in the delivery tool. So yeah, going back to kind of this explanation, again, of how this all kind of comes together, we only want to send the user the variant of the page that they will need. So this is kind of an example of, one way you could use audience targeting. Let's say you have you have a homepage, you have readers in many different countries. Let's say Argentina and Mexico. You have big audiences there, and maybe you want to prioritize different content for those readers. So the readers coming from Argentina, you have different news headlines, maybe different sports headlines. The readers coming from Mexico, content more relevant to that audience. You go into Page Builder, create those two variants, and assign them, to the audience that you've created. And then basically at the CDN, whenever a user is visiting from Argentina, we'll serve them the audience variant. Whenever a user is visiting from Mexico, we'll serve them the Mexico variant. And but the person from Mexico is not having to download the Argentina version. They only get the version that they need to see. So this is a lot better for page performance, again, when you're really fundamentally changing the layout or having completely different content for the different variants. Cool, so I'll talk about some ways, ideas, how you can use audience targeting. First, like I kind of talked about, different homepages for users in different countries. Another example, that we've talked to some customers about and I think is really interesting to explore is having a version of your homepage for anonymous visitors versus people who are subscribers. So, people who are you don't know much about them versus the people that you actually have information about them, more who they are. Some of our customers who we've been talking to find that there's types of content that's really most effective to kind of entice those anonymous users to like keep reading, keep seeing more content and subscribe. Whereas people who are subscribers, like maybe they want more original or long form content, whatever it is, if you know that those groups tend to read different types of content, you can customize the page experience for them. And also, if that's, I guess the first example is kind of like a paywall model. If you're just trying to choose like which stories you think are most effective for anonymous visitors to read, that it will encourage them to subscribe. If you have more of a premium model where some content is always free, some content is always paid. Again, we've just heard about a desire to like optimize maybe more free content for the anonymous visitor, more paid content for the subscriber, to really like give the subscriber the value that they want and entice the anonymous visitor to keep visiting, keep reading that free content to help like get them to eventually convert. Another example, you might want a mobile-specific curated homepage. It's really about curation, I think. There was some good questions in talking about like mobile responsiveness earlier today, and I don't think that this needs to be used to make like a version of your site that is mobile responsive. Like it should be responsive always. This is more about if you find that readers on their phones want more quick summary headlines, or readers on their tablets want more long form content. Like whatever it is, if you're kind of analyzing the behavior of your readers and seeing trends across different device types, you can make different homepages that will be served to readers on those devices. And then another capability that I think is really exciting that audience targeting unlocks is the ability to run A/B tests on your homepage. It's powerful. It will require some work. It's not quite as simple as the content testing that I was talking about before. But basically, how you would do this, you would set a cookie on your users. Like, let's say you have a test and you want to serve, have 80% of them see the control experience and 20% of them see the test experience. You would give 20% of them a cookie, say test group 1, and then you associate that audience, people that have that cookie, with that variant of the page. Then you're going to go into your analytics platform, and you can report essentially when visitors are seeing test group 1 version of the page versus the control, and see measure success, see if it's more effective at doing whatever it is you're testing. Part of the reason this is a little more complex and harder to automate than the content testing is because really only you know what success means. Maybe it's click-through rate, maybe it's getting people to sign up for a newsletter, maybe it's encouraging people to subscribe, maybe it's like you want to increase the engagement, the time spent on the page. So it's more of a manual process, but it is possible. And we're going to continue kind of thinking about ways to make doing this process easier over time. Yeah, and then, so I next wanted to go into like, especially with that kind of A/B testing that, like I said, is not as automated, just some tips to kind of help get started. I think something that's really powerful is just writing a hypothesis. This is a really simple formula. We hypothesize that, whatever change you're going to make will increase whatever KPI you're trying to improve because, and then like say the reasoning behind your idea. This is just really helpful. It's really like kind of the scientific method, if it sounds familiar. And actually writing out what you believe, it kind of forces you to get clarity on it, first of all, and like be clear about what exactly you think this will improve, and have a written record of that so that you can kind of learn from it over time. So this is like an example hypothesis. We hypothesize that personalizing the content displayed on our homepage based on the user's location will increase engagement as measured by time spent on the page by 25%, because it will provide users with more relevant content and increase their likelihood of exploring more content on our website. So yeah, it's kind of just it's a like relatively simple way to kind of organize your thoughts, organize your process, and share, among a wide group of people, editorial users, engineers, product, like what exactly it is that you're trying to test. Like put it in kind of a simple language for everybody to understand. And then yeah, like it's also important because like this really does kind of come back to the scientific method. If you remember learning about it in, elementary school or something, you kind of have some ideas. You want to construct a hypothesis. You want to actually test it and see, is it affecting whatever KPI we thought it was going to be? Analyze it, draw the conclusions, and it's good to get in the habit of sharing the results, in your organization either way, whether it was what you quoted, you think of as a success, like yes, it really did improve this KPI, or if it's a failure, like failure is part of the process. It is, again, in the scientific method, like you're supposed to use that as input for new experiments. So it helps you understand what didn't work, make sure you don't try to test that again. Maybe you now have some new ideas about what to test. So again, this is kind of like really relatively simple way to just start getting that process going, across teams at your organization. Okay, and the last part I'm going to talk about is some things that are, so sorry, I should have said about the audience targeting. That is in active development. It's going to be coming out for some beta availability kind of at the end of the quarter and available to everybody, early Q3. Definitely let me know if you're interested. So that one is very much nearing release. These are kind of getting into some other ideas we have about the optimization and intelligence space. And, some of them Matt talked about yesterday. A lot is changing with this with the AI and the transformers very rapidly. So I want to share, kind of some ideas and really get your feedback and hear from you, like what you think these kind of, what tools would be helpful for you. So this is one that I would love to know if, this kind of use case would help your organization for anything. So I was talking earlier about Clavis, and our first version of Clavis used natural language processing to really understand the topics that an article was about, which had its challenges because it only worked in English, and like I said, it wasn't actually the most effective for creating recommendations. But we still see value in doing that kind of like topic analysis. Our approach this time would be more about like, enabling you to use an IFX integration and bring in whatever natural language processing or machine learning algorithm makes sense for your organization to analyze that, and then add, topics back to the metadata of the article so that you can use it for other purposes. And some of the examples here, that we've kind of been talking to some customers about, one is contextual advertising, which, with the deprecation of the third-party cookie, I think is just going to become more valuable to advertisers. So, in the past where, say, Nike or Adidas, if they wanted to advertise to people who were interested in sports, they had access to all that third-party data to target like unique users who have, gone to their site before, or they know so much about them, they know exactly what they're interested in. So without access to that information, contextual advertising is kind of making more, I guess, of a comeback, and that's just more about like direct sold advertising, say on your sports sections, your sports content on, excuse me, on your website, selling advertising directly to brands like I said, Nike, Adidas, right for that content, because they know that people who are reading those articles have some interest in sports. So again, I think this was, a lot of organizations still do this. It kind of got overtaken by the third-party programmatic for a while, but with some of that going away, this is another opportunity, for publishers to have like really valuable inventory for advertisers. So that's contextual advertising. Also, building first-party user data. So, obviously we heard a lot about that this morning. You can learn this by understanding, if you're tracking what your users are reading, and in Composer you're assigning a section to that article, that data is already available for you to track, like the name of the section. But if you want to get more specific about the content and have, categorize it into broader topics, using machine learning to like analyze a story, pull out the topics, automatically add it to the metadata could be a good option, so that your actual editorial staff doesn't have to sit there and like type in a bunch of keywords, because like I think Nick said in one of the earlier presentations, like nobody wants to do that. I totally agree. There's a lot of intelligence platforms that can do that now. So basically you analyze the story that you've published in Composer, you add metadata to it to say, here's what this is about, and then you can use that, again, really wherever. Ads, learning about your audience, all kinds of things. Yeah, and then, the sort of abilities of different machine learning transformer models are obviously changing really rapidly, so just keeping an eye on other possible use cases like automatically summarizing the article into a description, really anything where you want to like analyze the story content and do a machine learning process on it and put that data back into the story. And last is, again, just some kind of high-level topics that we're having a lot of conversations about. I would love to hear from your organization, what's most of interest. I talked a little bit about user-personalized content recommendations. Once we get the first version of audience targeting out, want to know from you what else would be useful for this kind of capability. Like I said, we're looking at some ways to make the A/B testing process a little easier. Be able to apply it to say, so for when it's coming out, it's going to be able to apply it to pages in Page Builder. And we're exploring expanding it to templates. There is more of a cost associated to that because it ends up splitting the cache for a lot of your site traffic, and so much of the traffic comes through article templates, but it's definitely something we're exploring. Like Matt was talking about, there's a lot of really exciting and rapidly changing things that could be possible using AI and transformers. Yeah, and last, just want to hear from you, what other areas are you looking for to help you with testing and optimization? So we can I think we have a little bit of time to do Q&A, but that's it for me. That's my email and my the link to do the ARC advice later if you'd like to do that. So yeah, thank you. And are there any questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, are there criteria besides the first three that you might add later, or do you think these are where it's going to be for a while?
There's definitely other options. It has to be something that can be detected, like from the request the user makes. So I'm curious if there's other ones you're thinking of.
Well, a lot of things could be addressed by cookie,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to think about more specific geographies, possibly like a
Okay.
state level or things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So the one part that's kind of, we're starting with country from the Akamai capability because that's a lot more reliable than when you try to get down to the state or territory or city level. It's based on IP address, and it sometimes depends on what your internet provider, where they kind of have you assigned, or if you're using a VPN, it can be masked really easily. So we want to start with the country level because that's most accurate. Definitely, we're thinking about potentially introducing the next level down later, but we'd want to do it in a way where, let's say you actually have some first-party data from your readers and they tell you like, I live in Maryland. So you could set up an audience that is like either Akamai detects you're in Maryland or you have a cookie on you that says you're in Maryland. Because, I mean, I live in DC and weather, all the kind of stuff that relies on that, like weather information, sometimes it thinks I'm in Maryland, sometimes it thinks I'm in DC, sometimes it thinks I'm in Virginia. Like, so basically, that's how we'd want to introduce it, I think, is if you actually know from the user, use that. Otherwise, use like the more automated targeting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And one related question about that too. Can it be used, does everything have to be an if-else 2 versions, or can you just say, just show this to USA people, and if not, don't do anything?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Is it sort of like an A/B test where there has to be
Yep.
2? Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a default.
Okay.
So, and yeah, I don't think I explained that very well. No, there's always a default, and it's basically like if a user, let's say like the example of you want a homepage for users in Mexico and you want a homepage for users from Argentina, if the CDN detects they're in either of those places, it puts them into those audiences, they see those variants. But for everybody else, there's a default version that they see. Yeah. Yep.
DC Clav is expanding into newsletters, like recommendations for individual users. I know that that's not possible right now, individual users.
The personalization,
that's coming, but
yeah.
super personalized newsletters.
So, I mean, it is an API, and the primary use case I think that we have people using right now is displaying those recommendations on the website, but definitely seems possible and worth considering. Like, maybe even possible today. I'd have to check because I don't want to say that if it's not true. But at the core, it's an API, so you can call it wherever you want to and do what you want to with it. So, yeah, but definitely that's a good idea. I'll keep that in mind as we're expanding that. Yeah.
For your Bandito content testing as well as the audience targeting testing that is coming in the future, you mentioned it working for pages. Will it also work for templates? So
yeah, Bandito, both of them work for pages right now. And definitely expanding the audience targeting to templates is like very high on our radar to explore next. I'd definitely be curious if you would prefer, if you think there's more value in the audience targeting on templates versus the content targeting on templates, content targeting on templates. Really the content targeting, like it's mostly meant for those editorial users who primarily are just updating pages, most of which is the homepage, but also sometimes other section fronts or landing pages. So it's kind of why we have it there. And like I said, definitely know for the audience targeting, there's a lot of appetite and use cases for doing it on templates. We're starting with pages so that we can kind of get it out there, as quickly as possible. And there is added complexity once we, like I said, once we start applying that to templates. Basically, instead of in the CDN cache, there just being one version of the page, now there could be, say 3 or 5 versions of that page. So that doesn't make a huge impact when you're only applying it to, pages. But if you start applying it to templates and you have an article template that renders millions of articles, that's a huge expansion in how much the cache is getting split. So we're getting the first version out there and kind of continuing to ideate, research, and figure out, kind of like what are the most important use cases for templates and design it around that so it can be like as cost effective as possible and not, using a lot of extra bandwidth. So definitely we're exploring it. Would love to hear like specific ideas of like things you'd want to, test.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Okay. All right. Well, I think we're all wrapped up. Thank you all. Definitely, like I said, if I haven't met you yet, come say hi. Would love to hear any thoughts you have about all the experience products. either today or after the conference. So thanks again.